Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Thursday, September 16th, 2021. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, let me tell you about my co-host. She hails from Wild Rose country. You see, because she's as sweet as a rose and she's wilder than a wolverine with a toothache when it comes to exposing corruption. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing, Sheila?
David, that was an excellent intro. I was worried about where it was going when you said I was as sweet as a rose. I'm like, that's not something I'm often called. Let's see where this goes. Oh, thanks, David.
You know that. Sheila, you're saying is I kill them with kindness. You are one of the kindest people I know. And if sweet as a rose is sexist, well, guilty as charged, I guess. Right?
No, I'm pro-sexism. If it means holding the door open for me, I'm fine. I welcome the patriarchy. David.
Yes.
Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the day, and before we have to move away from YouTube, because I feel like we're going to get into the red zone pretty quick here, I met a very nice man just a couple of days ago in Regina at our very, very successful event with Dr. Patrick Moore, where we re-platformed that very intellectual man after he was deplatformed from speaking at a City of Regina sustainability event. He's literally a sustainability expert, but he also doesn't believe that the doomsday is coming with regard to climate change. So he's instantly a heretic, right? Like, he's just whatever. Everything you've ever done, including literally saving the whales, that doesn't count because you're not full of anxiety and behaving like little Greta Thunberg. But anyways, while I was at the event, a guy comes up to me and he was super duper excited. He was just like, Sheila, is David Menzies here? And I'm like, okay, well, it's good to see you. I'm fine. But no, David Menzies isn't here. His name was Eric, and he was wearing one of those beautiful Menzoid t-shirts available for sale in rebelnewsstore.com. So he was there. He held up his part of the bargain.
Yes.
You weren't there. There's Eric.
Fantastic. Yes, he held up his part of the bargain. The bargain you speak of, Sheila, is Eric really a Menzoid superfan, or did he buy that shirt so that he could get $100? Because that's what I said since we released it in the Rebel News store, folks. The first person we see wearing the Menzoid shirt in public, not including friends, family, staff. And I'll tell you, a few staff members, they're cheeky here, Sheila, at head office, came up to me going, where's my dough? You'd get $100. But we disqualify that. What do you think we are, the We charity here, folks?
Yeah, right.
So I was not there. And because Eric is in Saskatchewan, I'm not going to give him a $100 bill. I'm going to write him a check for $100. Coincidentally, it's my last check in my checkbook. Sheila, would you send $100 in the mail? I mean, I kind of like to think the mail should be trusted, but I kind of get the sense there's some, I don't know, people out there that have a sixth sense to, getting an idea there might be some do-re-mi in that envelope. So I'm going to send him a check, which is a little safer. And, Sheila, you suggested we should call him. He doesn't know we're going to make that call, so we might go to voicemail, folks.
Sure.
And I'll ask for his consent to speak on the air. So why don't we call Eric? And so we have video evidence that I came through on my part of the deal. And by the way, folks, this is coming out of my own pocket, right? One ringy dingy. Two ringy dingies. Three ringy dingies. It's early in Saskatchewan, right?
Yeah, it's 10.
I think we might go to voicemail, so I'll leave him a voicemail, Sheila.
Yeah. Show your work.
You have reached a voice messaging service. To leave a message, please re-enter the number of the person you are calling.
What? Boy, this is complicated.
Oh, I know. That's next level.
Oh, I'll call him again, folks. Anyways.
Outsmarted by technology once again, David Menzies.
What is this?
I know, it's complicated.
The phone system in Saskatchewan is like, the Douglases in Green Acres where you have to climb up a telephone pole to hit the receiver.
It's two farmers with tin cans to their ears. That's what it's like in
Sheila,
Saskatchewan.
I've never seen that in my life. It's 2021. I have to re-enter the number I was calling, and when I did, it disconnected. Anyways, Eric, if you are watching or if you can watch the repeat, I'm so sorry I wasn't there to meet you in person. I am contractually obligated not to visit Regina. That's just the way it is for reasons I will not get into here. And I am going to write you a check for $100. Thank you so much for your support of the Rebel Store, and thank you so much for choosing the Menzoid t-shirt. I will phone you off air, get your mailing address, and there you go. Promises made, promises kept, right, Sheila?
Yeah, look at us being some of the only conservatives out there in the world. Making promises and keeping promises. Ain't that right, Jason Kenney, Aaron O'Toole?
Oh, what a great segue. Hey, don't leave out Doug Ford in that list, Sheila. How dare you? Right?
Was that man ever even pretending to be a conservative? I guess just briefly. Now, we should tell everybody what we're doing before. Again, we're going to get into like red zone country where YouTube will not want us on here anymore pretty quick. So let's get the fine details out of the way. And then we'll talk as long as we can before we have to pump the brakes and say, oh, time to go, YouTube friends. Join us on another platform. So right now we are currently streaming on, out of the corner of my eye, I can see we are on YouTube. And we are on YouTube mostly just for spite and a little bit because, well, no, I would say it's 50% spite. They don't want us there, so of course, naturally, we're going to be there. That for me, that's how you get more of me. Like, oh, you don't want me to come to your place? Oh, I'll be right outside. I'll be a regular now. I'm a regular. But we also have 1.5 million YouTube subscribers there, and we don't want to abandon them. YouTube doesn't like you, but we kind of like you. So we're going to talk to you as long as we can there. But if you are watching us there, and maybe you don't feel good about giving a censorship platform like YouTube your eyeballs anymore, because really you are the product over there, because they sell advertising based on how many of you are watching. So if you don't want to give them your money and if you don't want to give them your support and your eyeballs, and they can sell advertising based on how many of you are there, why don't you take an off-ramp to one of the other platforms like Rumble, Odyssey, and Super U? We're streaming there, and all of those now at this point have the ability for you to support the work that we do completely voluntarily, unlike the billions of dollars that you have to give to different mainstream media outlets, including the CBC. And then there's the other bailout bucks that the mainstream media got from Justin Trudeau to ask questions nobody cares about, that he's not smart enough to answer anyway. So if you'd like to leave us a tip, I think you can leave us a Rumble rant, and we'll do our best to read that on air. You can leave us Super U. You can talk to each other doing something called a Super U shout. You can tip us as a creator there, and you can support us on Odyssey a couple different ways by leaving a hyper chat, and you can buy some of their cryptocurrency. I know. Don't write me any more emails. I know I don't understand cryptocurrency. I'm going to get around to it.
About that.
I know, but you know what? I can't learn about cryptocurrency in the middle of an election campaign. Give me a minute. So you can tip us as a creator there. You can send us a hyper chat there as well, through regular old currency, but also this mystical cryptocurrency that I promise I will learn about. I really will, but the election campaign is not the time to do it. So I think that's all of our bases covered, and there are things like experimental medical procedures that they want everybody to get right now that we cannot really talk about on YouTube, because you question the science and bickety bam, you're gone just like that. So when we get into that territory, we will have to say goodbye to some of you, but maybe not goodbye, just like see ya in a minute on another platform.
In fact, Sheila, I've been told we can't even say on YouTube what we can't talk about. So yeah, we can't talk about, I'll give the initials, VF. and VP. I'll let you figure it out on your own, folks. We can't talk about those because we'll be deplatformed. They'll probably come up with a new rule where you can't even give the initials out of what you're not allowed to talk about. But, you know, Sheila, I just want to go back to what you were saying about how the mainstream media is getting funded by government, especially the CBC, and 'twas ever thus, to the tune of more than $1 billion a year. And maybe at the end of the show, if we have time, we can show my run-in with Marg Warrior Queen of This Hour Has 22 Minutes, who's actually so unfunny. She's unintentionally, brilliantly hilarious. And we encountered her outside the Canadian Museum of History at the French leaders debates, and then the following day at the English language leader debate. And I mean, she really picked the wrong territory in which to swim. It was a large gathering of PPC supporters, rightfully demonstrating that why can't their man, Maxime Bernier, get in, because there was one poll that showed he was at 11% that day, which was more than the Bloc Québécois and the Green Party combined. And they were chanting defund the CBC, and I asked her about that. Like, why is she so entitled to her entitlement? Why does she depend on CBC money? And it was incredible because her answer was, first, well, the BBC gets taxpayer money. Oh, so two wrongs make a right.
What's that got to do with me? What does that have to do with me?
And then, I'm paraphrasing here, she said at one point, what if we were to defund Rebel News? And it was so shocking, Sheila, that you don't know, like, you're so deep in the swamp, and 'twas ever thus, that you don't know we don't get taxpayer dollars, that even if offered, we wouldn't accept it, that we reach out to our viewers.
That's our whole shtick.
Yeah. It was like, but she has an assumption that everyone's on the taxpayer teat, Sheila. And to me, that spoke volumes, that she thought one of her witty comebacks was, why don't we defund Rebel News? There's subscriptions and voluntary donations that fund this network. So it's just astonishing.
You know, have you ever tried to watch This Hour Has 22 Minutes without the laugh track? There used to be YouTube channels that would remove the laugh track from things you maybe thought were funny. And then they take the laugh track out and you're like, wait, have I been brainwashed by a laugh track all these years? Like, this isn't funny at all. And there was one that had This Hour Has 22 Minutes. And I'm like, these aren't even funny, even by CBC standards, which is not funny at all. I was like, oh my goodness, these are not, they're not comedian, like government comedians are exactly that. Like they're also rationing the laughs because there aren't any. Like, it was just like a bunch of life-sucking time vampires. I'm like, how is anybody watching this for a half an hour? It is not funny, and I have literally fallen victim to the mass delusion that a laugh track provides to you.
Sheila.
You know, like where you're like, it's not even to my taste. Like, CBC is not to my taste, but whatever. But it wasn't even there. It wasn't even that it could be to anybody's taste. It's just awful.
You know, Sheila, I think unwittingly, I suppose, you have come up with a 7-figure piece of consulting advice for This Hour Has 22 Minutes. Namely, folks, we'd love to perform our shtick in front of a live studio audience, but because of COVID, we have to use a laugh track for social distancing and safety. So that's the real reason we're using a laugh track, because if we had real people here, they'd be slapping their knees in hysterics at our content.
You know, at least, David, I've seen you address a crowd live, and at least you can get some genuine laughs out of those people. But it's true. Like, some of these mainstream media places, they really do need that light that comes on that says applause when you're supposed to applaud, because you wouldn't know. You just wouldn't have a clue.
It's so true, Sheila. Oh, but you know what? We should get to the meat and potatoes of today, and
yes.
A couple of things, and they are both well, one's emanating in your in your neck of the woods, rather, Sheila, Alberta, with another incredible Jason Kenney flip-flop regarding the COVID rules, and of course at the province next door in the city whose name I dare not say, the wonderful Rebel Live event. I assume it's wonderful. I wasn't there, because if I was there, I would have given Eric that $100 bill. I wish I was there, but you were there, Sheila. So why don't we start with the good news? From all accounts, I heard it was just a super successful event. It
was so great and so normal, and it was so good to be back with our people again. It was like this wash of normalcy that I loved getting when I would go to Grace Life Church every week to detail the persecution of that church there, because you're out there in the world and it's like everybody's wearing a mask and nobody's looking at each other, and if you're not wearing a mask then somebody's yelling at you for not wearing a mask, and then you walk through the doors and everything is normal, people are happy, people are hugging. That's what it was like. But instead of 500 people, it was 1,500 people from all across the prairies. Some people had flown in, and it was just normal. People talking about a lot of people are talking about how bad everything is, but outside of where we were, and how great it was that people were just talking and you could see everybody's faces. And see, look at that crowd. And like a free exchange of ideas. Dr. Patrick Moore is so normal and so smart and so accomplished. Like I said, the man literally saved the whales. He's a co-founder of Greenpeace. Yes. He got the Americans to stop nuclear testing, and he's deplatformed by a bunch of busybodies because he doesn't think that the world is going to end because of your SUV. And so we said, the hell with that. We believe in exchanging dangerous ideas. And in this case, the dangerous idea is you're not going to die in 12 years or 10 years or whatever that little teenage climate truant tells us is going to happen to us. That's all it was. And he had supporting facts. What was amazing in his presentation, and hopefully we'll show some of that, maybe not today, but on the website eventually.
And you know, Sheila, if I can interject.
Sorry, go ahead.
You've said the word normal, I think, 5 times. And I got to tell you, folks, Sheila loves normalcy. I agree with Sheila. I think normal is the new cutting edge cool.
Normal is the new dangerous.
Exactly. and I got a very quick anecdote of the enduring memory I have of our wonderful Israel trip with some rebels and audience members that came along to Israel back in 2018. We went to an air show. It was a graduation ceremony plus an air show that blew away any air show I've ever seen in my life. The hardware on display was just awe-inspiring. And I'm with Sheila, and we're looking at this like sort of runway of vintage jet fighters and bombers, and we're seeing the cadets, and they're all so physically fit and clean cut and wearing uniforms without a crease in it. And Sheila's looking at them and she makes the observation, I don't see anyone with rainbow colored hair. I don't see anyone with their face like a pincushion with all these piercings. This is a weirdo-free zone, right? I thought it really is. And man, that's what made it stand out. It was so refreshing. And so, like I said, Sheila, normal is the new cool in my book, too.
The whole country of Israel was like that. I was like, look around at all the young people, David. Look at them all. They're all just normal people, not a weirdo to be had. It was wonderful. Normal truly is the new punk, isn't it?
Yes, it is, right? Well, especially since a lot of the punk rock community, Sheila, now endorses government forcing masks and closures and social distancing and vax passports. I mean, what happened to the punks of the 70s that were, against the establishment? Another indicator, I think, Sheila, of the world being upside down.
Except for Johnny Rotten, I think. Who's the other guy? The one guy from the Ramones, he's pretty like libertarian. He's like, no, we got into this because we didn't like being told what to do. Let's just keep a good thing going. And so there are some that are resistant. But yeah, like the people, the new nonconformists, the rainbow hairs, they're the ones who are telling us what we have to do and we should listen to the government. And I'm like, that might be the only thing you people ever had right, is that we shouldn't listen to the government. Now you're wanting me to do everything the government tells me to do. But getting back to the Dr. Patrick Moore event. What he did was so great in his presentation, because he went through the chronology of fake news on so many climate change issues, and not just like the broad overreach that, that they keep adjusting the doomsday clock of when we're all going to die because of my Jeep. But it's like even on smaller issues like the dying coral reefs. And it would be like, here's a story from 2014. Here's how the story changed in 2015. And when the doomsday didn't happen, here's how they made an excuse for that in 2016. And by 2017, they'd moved on to something else. And he did that with so many things, from coral reefs to polar bears. I mean, it was just fantastic because he had gone and done the homework, and you could see it in CNN articles and MSNBC articles in real time, how they just changed along the way when things didn't happen the way they predicted. And it was awesome because it's the rebel mission. It was the other side of the story.
And you know what, Sheila? It's funny you should mention the coral reef and how it's been able to adapt. And apparently the dominant species on the planet, we're unable to adapt. And now on the way to headquarters this morning, I was listening to, he's a good guy on most issues, I think, Jerry Agar of News Talk 1010. And he gave an anecdote of in the 70s when he has a younger brother by 8 years. So in this time period, Jerry's 16 and his brother is 8. And his brother got into a funk of depression by all the climate hysteria of the time. And so he said, "Do you want to come out and go to a hockey game?" "No." "Well, why not?" "Well, because the world's going to end." "Really? You believe that?" And he says, "Yeah, don't you know, this planet is going to freeze. Freeze, not global warming," because people of a certain age like me, we remember the Time magazine cover, which was a frozen wasteland with a penguin.
I remember.
It was global freeze. That's what they were hawking, and they were so sure of it. And now it's not freezing, it's warming. And when the stats don't make sense of a continued warming pattern, it's simply change. So if it's cold, if it's hot, if it's something in between, oh yeah, man, that's climate change. It means we're headed for disaster. So back then, that was the narrative. And today, like you said, we have challenged Swedish teenagers in wherever she is, bemoaning the fact that we've got, is it 8 years or 7 years left? I can't remember where we're at the doomsday calendar now, Sheila.
It's different because what Greta says, when Greta says we're all going to die, is very different than when the IPCC, so the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the UN people, they've actually pumped the brakes on their doomsday clock in their latest publication that just came out, if you bother to read past the summary for policymakers, which is like, here's how you justify a carbon tax. We'll put it in these 40 pages, but the actual details of what's really happening goes beyond that. But the IPCC said, yeah, no, we were a little bit overheated on our doomsday clock predictions, and so we need to dial that back, and we're not all going to die. But you wouldn't know that if you got all your news from the mainstream media. They literally are still like, yep, it's 5 years now. Don't pay your student loans. Don't pay your mortgage. You're going to die anyway. Climate change is going to kill you.
You know what? You've come up again with 7 figures of consulting advice, not for the CBC this time, but for Greta Thunberg, Sheila. And that is to make a little doomsday clock which counts down to this, whatever the date is. Kind of like when Chris Jericho first came to the WWE, they had that countdown, right? Which was so brilliant, the best running joke ever. Yeah. And Greta could get those made and sold. Of course, they'd be made in a factory in China that's run by coal, but we won't dwell on that. It's for the greater good, the same greater good that suggests why she needs to fly everywhere in jet planes. But there you go, the Greta Thunberg Doomsday Clock, digitally showing exactly how many years, months, weeks, days, minutes, and seconds we all have left on the late, great planet Earth.
Now, from one doomsday, mismanaged by the government, or hyper-managed by the government, I guess, to the next one that's hyper-managed by the government when all predictions also are never met. Why don't we talk about what's happening here in Alberta? We've gone from Ron DeSantis to Governor, I always call him Governor Gavin Newsom.
Please don't bring up that name. I was so hopeful of what was going to happen on the recall. So
you know
hopeful.
What? Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1 in that state. So even if he made a good showing, I didn't think Larry Elder would ever win there. But I mean,
it's heartbreaking.
Whatever.
I mean, 1980, that state went Reagan. Which is inconceivable to think any Republican could win California anymore. And California, Sheila, I'm talking about the landmass, not the politicians who run it. This was the holy grail of the American dream. When you go back to post-war, go west, young man, go to California. It was the American dream on steroids. Great climate, fantastic highway system, affordable housing, for young families. And then over the decades, thanks to Democratic malfeasance, it's become a cesspool. I mean, there are places in Los Angeles and San Francisco, which is one of the most beautiful cities on the planet. But if you get too much into the inner city, you got to watch out for hypodermic needles, human feces, violent homeless people. It is
flesh-eating disease.
Pardon me?
Flesh-eating disease. Oh,
yes, thank you.
They have strange diseases that the Western world really doesn't have, and it's happening in LA's inner city.
And it's heartbreaking to me, Sheila. I've gone to California, and I think California is an idea, especially when you're far away. I remember the first time in the 80s when I was working in northern Alberta all the way to California, and you're on a diet of Beach Boys songs and Hollywood motion pictures, and there's so much about that state that's iconic. It's this incredible place to go to, and even in the 80s, it still was. I mean, like I said, Reagan won the state, and now what's happened, it is so heartbreaking because that was a utopia. That was an American utopia, and in a scant few decades, it's turned into a disaster.
Well, and don't even get me started on how green energy policies led to much of that. But we should, because it's in the title of the YouTube video for today, the new COVID rules in Alberta. We must get to those.
Yes.
Okay, so yesterday, broad sweeping restrictions were announced in Alberta after we had been open July 1st for the best summer ever. Open for good, they told us. Open for good. I went and checked yesterday.
Right? That's when it happened.
On Dominion Day, yep. And I went and checked yesterday to see if they were still selling those obnoxious best summer ever UCP hats on their website, and apparently they took them down. Good idea, guys. Good idea.
Yeah, best summer ever. We didn't even get the chuck wagon races at the Calgary Stampede this year, right?
Yeah, our civil liberties are falling like leaves in the fall here. They sent out an Amber Alert yesterday, and our videographer, Kian Simone, he posted Amber Alert, and it was like because we've gone into a state of emergency again. So they sent this emergency message to all of our phones, and Kian goes, yeah, Amber Alert, reporting our civil liberties missing. Because yesterday, they announced churches are back to masking, 1/3 capacity, social distancing, everybody's social distancing. But I think the worst part about it is Jason Kenney, who said time and time again, not only do we not think vaccine passports are a good idea, and we will not do them, but that we will actively oppose them if the federal government tries to impose them on you. And he told our friend Adam Sos that. And he said it multiple times. In fact, just last week, the UCP sent out a fundraising letter on the fact that they would oppose vaccine passports. And yet this week, now they say they're not doing it, but they also said in prior statements that they wouldn't facilitate a vaccine passport either. So we won't participate in any attempts to do this, because it's a violation of your privacy, your human rights, whatever. Now, yesterday night, Jason Kenney basically washed his hands of all of this and said, well, it's not us. We're going to make the business owners do it. We're going to make the business owners violate the privacy of their customers. So if you don't want to be banned from restaurants, basically, if you are unvaccinated at this point, you have to stay outside and eat outside like an animal, like an unhouse-trained dog. That's how you have to live your life now. You only get curbside pickup, or you have to produce a clean COVID test that you pay for out of pocket before you can go beers with your friends. And everybody else, you have to produce your vaccine status to your bartender before he can give you a Bud Light. So now we're dividing friends from friends, family from family, based on vaccine status. And it even goes down to who you can have in your home. And I know we have some clips to that effect, but basically, unvaccinated people cannot gather. You just can't gather. You're just a pariah. You're a leper now.
Sheila, can I ask you one thing? Because I think this is a big part of the story. Even if this had to be done, and that is, of course, debatable, could Jason Kenney not wait 4 more days? In other words, after the federal election on Monday, because he has delivered a gift to the likes of Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh. They were all over the media this morning. Trudeau, in a condescending speech, saying, whatever we can do to help Albertans. We have ventilators on standby, as if the
Then why the hell didn't he give them to us?
Yes. And of course, Jagmeet Singh saying this is what you get when you have a conservative premier and a liberal federal leader. They are making political hay out of this. Sheila, surely it's not as dire as being reported that it couldn't wait 4 more days, or is it?
No, it's not dire. Everybody's just walking around living their lives. No, I mean, the only people
why did he
buying
do this? Why did he strategically? This is such a fumble.
He says the healthcare system is overwhelmed. You had 19 months to ramp up healthcare capacity. If you even thought that COVID was going to be butting up against the flu season, you could have doubled capacity in our ICUs. You had 19 months. You could have tripled it. Tripled capacity. We didn't do that. We ramped up moderately lately, but from what I understand, Tyler Shandro actually shrunk ICU capacity by 20% recently. So now we're trying to dig ourselves out of this hole and get on top of it, which I think is very clear failure of your job as a health minister to, ensure healthcare readiness for flu season, cold and flu season, the Delta variant. They had 19 months, and everybody along the way also, you know what, maybe we should say goodbye to YouTube before I really get off the rev limiter here.
And by the way, this would be a good opportunity because super replacement producer Efron, because Justin's taking a few well-earned days off, he has told me he's got a whole string of Kenney disastrous clips. This is like a montage of Irwin Allen mini movies, folks, of Jason Kenney. So he's got his thumb up. So maybe should we run some of those first, Sheila, and then you can finish your thought?
Yes, and also, Efron, if you wouldn't mind letting me know where we're putting the Rumble rants and all those talks. I was talking to Justin, and he has the day off, so that's okay. Oh, it's Slack. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was talking to Justin, but apparently he has the day off, so that's why he didn't answer me. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for that. I'll look right now.
Because the slacker is not in the work place right now.
He works hard.
Anyway, we have the clip, Sheila, so let's run this unintentionally hilarious montage of Jason Kenneyisms.
This is a happy day for Alberta. I am very happy to be here with Health Minister Tyler Shandro for some fantastic news for all Albertans. To adopt the Restriction Exemption Program, a proof of vaccination program for participation in certain discretionary activities that have a higher risk of viral transmission.
Sorry. But I just want to ask you if, because this message that we have right now is open for some.
It's open for good. Open for good.
Are you sure that?
Open for good.
I don't want to go back to
I swear to God.
Yeah, not gonna.
What's your position on vaccine passports for those individuals unwilling to be vaccinated?
Opposed, and we've been very clear from the beginning that we will not facilitate or accept vaccine passports, and that in fact we regard, I believe that they would in principle contravene the Health Information Act.
We have no capacity I don't even know what a vaccine passport is. All I know is this, that it's illegal based on the Privacy Act to ask somebody whether they've received a certain medical procedure or not, including a vaccine. So the government of Alberta at least will not be participating in anything like that.
Now, Sheila, first of all, big shout out to Kian Simone, Special K, for putting that montage together. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kian. And where do we start? I guess since you are a woman of faith, Sheila, I guess when Jason Kenney says, "I swear to God," I suppose we have to look around his back and see if he's got his fingers crossed. That's how you get out of a swearing to God, isn't it?
No, not even close. I'm going to have to send Jason Kenney a couple tweets about some confessionals that are open for him to attend. I'll send him the times in and around his area because he lied through his teeth there. Swear to God. And then he made the sign of the cross. So it's not just like a thing that you say. It's not just a colloquialism. He participated in the swearing to God. And then over and over and over again, we don't even know what a vaccine passport is. Oh, you learned pretty fast. And then, he said it in a way to the person who asked that question in the live stream there, because that was a Facebook live stream. He said it in a way that if you were even asking about it or concerned about it, you're probably a conspiracy theorist. But they're here now. And so if you don't have proof of vaccination, you have to live by all these onerous restrictions that basically segregates you from society. It's a medical caste system where there are the clean and the unclean, and within your own family, clean and the unclean. So you can't gather in your own home with your unvaccinated family because the government told you that's the case. Well, I dare these people to surveil me because we're going to live our lives around here at Reid's Ranch, and we don't care if you're vaccinated, if you're not vaccinated. It's none of my business. Yep. My unvaccinated friends, my vaccinated friends, I don't care. It's none of my business. And now's the time, people of Alberta. Even if you are vaccinated, are you going to let the government of Alberta treat your unvaccinated friends and family like second-class citizens, like they are a bunch of lepers, like they're dirty people who don't deserve to participate in society? It's none of our businesses why these people made the choice to be unvaccinated or to get vaccinated. But the whole point is that up until now, they were able to make that choice. The government just took it away. I am not going to let the government tell me who I can have in my own home, who my friends are, and who I can visit. That's the end of it. That's the end of discussion. And I hope and pray that there are some businesses out there who say, no, you punished us for a year and a half. We did everything you asked us to. You put us in conflict with our customers every single day. This is absolutely a bridge too far. And here's the worst, most unscientific part. Even if you are vaccinated, even if you are yeah, sure, apparently you need to know my private medical history so that you can pour me a Bud Light draft. Here it is. But now you're making me wear a mask too?
Oh, yes.
Are you an anti-vaxxer? Do you think your vaccine doesn't work? Do you think the vaccine doesn't work? Because if you think it doesn't work, then that making me wear a mask makes sense. Or vaccines do work. You get to pick a lane. I'm fine over here. I think it's all ridiculous.
Sheila, I have no doubt that the majority of Albertans are reacting to this with fury and sadness and a combination of those two things. Here's the thing, you know the Alberta political landscape better than I do, of course. Within Jason Kenney's own party, there must be some kind of a rebellion boiling because these people went out and said, yeah, we're out of the woods, we're going back to normalcy, and now this?
Yeah, so they went back to their constituencies and did the summer barbecue circuit, as they tend to do out here. I don't know if you guys do those out there, but it's a big deal out here, the summer barbecue circuit. And it was pretty convenient that opened for good. Best summer ever happened right at the beginning of the summer barbecue circuit. And so these people were out there telling their constituents, yeah, trust us. Ramp up your staff in your restaurants. Get ready for NHL hockey season because your bars and your pubs are going to be full. Buy new hockey equipment. Do whatever you're going to do. Life is back to normal. And so for them, they feel as though that Jason Kenney facilitated a lie right through their teeth to their constituents, and they are going to pay for it. Yep. If Jason Kenney wants to ruin his own political career and his own aspirations at the Prime Minister's office, because I think that's what his stopover in Alberta was all about, that's fine. But you are systematically nuking the careers of dozens of UCP MLAs. That's what's going to happen here.
Oh, and Sheila, I think back to a few months ago, and we talked about this when Alberta was full on persecuting the likes of the Whistle Stop Cafe, Pastor Art. And what we determined was that come Dominion Day, when it's now business as usual, the only political factor Jason Kenney has going for him is time. It's like the Rolling Stones lyric, time is on my side. That by the time the election happens next year, people will have forgotten about how horrible things were. And what did he do yesterday? He put this right back into the 24-hour news cycle, and it looks like weeks and perhaps months of misery await. So there goes the time advantage. That was the only ace in his hand, Sheila, and he squandered that now as far as I'm concerned. And of course, that creates the disaster scenario, the doomsday scenario of Conservatives not voting for the party, simply staying home, and going up the middle, yet again, Rachel Notley and the destroyers with the NDP. This is what I fear the most of what's going to happen in your province, Sheila.
Yeah, I think you might see a refracturing of the party back to the rural Wild Rosie types and the urban PC conservative types. And the reason those rural conservatives broke off the first time was the corruption and the drift to the center and then to the left. And we're seeing that. It just took 40 years to do it last time. It literally took 4 this time. Like, this is warp speed. But I had some inklings that we were headed in this territory, even though Jason Kenney was saying other things publicly. Church in the Vine, I have a story coming out about that, but it keeps getting pushed back because it's election season, right? So it's a fight the fines story. A church in Edmonton has received recently, so they've gone back and been charged for things that happened in the past. Even though the churches were all open again at the time, they were charged with obstruction for not letting Alberta Health Services inspectors come in to inspect their services during the time that the church was closed. And so instead of just saying, okay, well, that's over and done, we don't need to go back and charge these people now for things that happened in the past, they were recently charged for things that happened months ago. And I thought, we've got to make an example again. We've got to teach Church in the Vine to behave themselves in advance of the next lockdown. That was my first clue. My second clue is that Jason Kenney's lawyer, I think he's the UCP lawyer, actually, Stephen Delansky, he's a very entrenched red-ish Tory. I think he's also on Aaron O'Toole's campaign. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But he was tweeting very favorably a couple weeks ago about vaccine passports. And what's the big deal about it? These vaccine passports. And I thought, that's the guy giving Jason Kenney legal advice about what is lawful, what isn't. And he's pretty pro-vaccine passport. What's the big deal? It's our way to get back to normal. As though violating everybody's medical privacy is a completely normal thing to do, you psychopaths. But anyways, when he was when he was tweeting about that, and I'm like, that's Jason Kenney's lawyer. He's the guy who sends out all the cease and desist letters on behalf of the premier. That guy is a big fan of vaccine passports. Here we go. It's only a matter of time. I wrote it down. I sent an email to Ezra and I said that I took his tweets, sent him in an email and said, like, this is coming. This is coming. Let's just watch and wait. And here we are.
Well, you are a Cassandra, Sheila, because what you predicted has indeed come true, and it is bad, bad news indeed. Do we have some hyper chats or super chats that have come in, my friend?
You know what? Before we go on, let's just show that clip of Shandro. Tyler Shandro, Alberta's failed health minister. If there's a person in this province who deserves to be laid off, it's not my bartender and my waitress. It's Tyler Shandro. His job was to ramp up capacity in the healthcare system, double it, triple it. I don't care, because it's a lot cheaper than the money we're going to have to pay out to support the people who are going to lose their jobs because of all of this. We have a clip yesterday. Efron, my friend, I think you grabbed it, and that's the one where he says that we can't have people in our homes unless they're vaccinated.
Let's check it out.
For unvaccinated people who are 12 and older, they will not be permitted to attend any private indoor social gatherings. For unvaccinated people who are 12 and older, they will not be permitted to attend any private indoor social gatherings.
What?
That's crazy. That is crazy. So for example, let's say mom and dad are vaccinated, but the kids aren't, because they're kids, you weirdos. And mom and dad have said, okay, fine, we're going to make the decision to get vaccinated. We're a little older, whatever, but we're not going to do this to our kids until we see a little more data. Mom and dad can go for dinner, but they got to leave the kids at home. Or they can go to the neighbor's house, or whatever, you're allowed cohorts now, so you can like join with one more family or something like that. So they can go, but they got to leave their kids at home.
Oh,
this is mental.
And Sheila, as we've discussed before, these are the salad days for the COVID Karens out there, the tattletales, the snitches, the rats. Once again, you're going to have that one person on that one street in that one neighborhood who's going to have the binoculars out doing self-policing and phoning some kind of a snitch line. Mark my words. And you're going to have communities torn apart by this. This is despicable.
Communities, families, businesses, congregations. I mean, this is the most divisive policy in Canada right now. We complain about Justin Trudeau treating people like they're clean and unclean, but he is not saying that our children who are unvaccinated cannot participate in private social gatherings with their parents. Jason Kenney and Tyler Shandro said that. That is the most divisive policy in this entire country.
But Sheila, from day one, we've been told by the governments, by the bureaucrats, by the Alberta Health Services types, you name it, all of their decisions is being driven by science. Where's the science here? That having that kind of a gathering is a breeding ground for future typhoid Marys.
None of this follows any science whatsoever. I mean, if it were scientific and they believed in the vaccines, then you wouldn't have to wear a mask if you produce proof of your vaccine, but you still have to wear a mask. Why is that? And why are we pretending like Israel just doesn't exist? Israel is our canary in the coal mine for everything. They were vaccinated first. They're seeing the vaccines fail first. And instead of us saying, okay, well, we're about 90 to 120 days away from whatever's unfolding there. Let's get working on whatever we do need to do to ramp up our healthcare system or deal with what's unfolding there. We didn't do any of it. We're just like, vaccines are the way to freedom. And so everybody lines up and gets a jab or two, or now 3. They did their part. They participated in your experiment. They threw caution and their better judgment to the wind because they thought, this is the way, I'll do it. And then Jason Kenney comes along and says, but it's not.
Sheila, in the big picture scheme of things, and I'm speaking not just about Alberta, but the world itself, Is this ever going to end? I mean, right now we're, it's the Delta variant that will go through the Greek alphabet until Omega. Then I guess we'll start numbering the variants with Roman numerals like they do for Super Bowls.
Let's name them like hurricanes.
Yeah.
Let's just name them like hurricanes. Ladies' names, men's names.
That's right.
Yeah.
We'll alternate the male-female names. I just, if it's maybe never going to end is an exaggeration, but I see this going on for years and years to come. I'd like to know when we're going to see some true light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, we thought we saw it here. And like, Jason Kenney is no better. In my mind, I said this to Ezra in a phone call this morning. Those people who sell the imaginary quick fixes to, this is I went into court and said I'm a free man on the land, or these quick fixes to get out of, post this thing at your door, it's a liability notice, and all of a sudden the cops can't enter into your business. That doesn't work. That's baloney. That's legal snake oil salesman. It's selling false hope to people. And while that's absolute madness and none of that stuff works, is Jason Kenney any better? He just sold an entire province of 4.5 million people a bunch of false hope on July 1st. He promised up and down that no matter what, he would withstand the pressure and allow us to be open again. And he lied. He sold snake oil to them too.
Yeah, and Efren says we can play the full clip again. And before we do so, I just want to say, all this snake oil, Harry Potter magic, homemade lawyering, it doesn't work.
Don't do
and
it.
Let's not forget, Sheila, our queen. No, not Elizabeth. I'm talking about the one in Vancouver.
Oh, yeah.
I can never remember her name. I know it kind of sounds like a marital aid, but I think the idea that she has tens of thousands of people on her side. To me, it's funny at first, and then it's sad. And it's sad, Sheila, because I think there are so many people out there that are desperate, So when you see one of our acolytes go into the Peterborough Police Department and do some kind of quasi-citizen's arrest in the name of the Queen in Vancouver, it's pathetic. But yet I don't want to make fun of these people, because they're desperate. They're probably out of work. They probably lost their business. These are such sad times we're living in. And instead of having...
They're victims. They're exploited.
Yeah. And where are the DeSantises of the world? We thought we had them in the likes of the Fords and the Kennys, but we don't, do we?
No, you know what? And again, I was talking to Ezra about the same thing. At least with Doug Ford... While for a time he pretended to be sort of a populist conservative, as soon as the pandemic hit, he showed exactly who he was as soon as the pandemic hit. But he picked a lane and stuck with it. So at least if you're a business owner, you know what, all hope is lost. I better just go back to school. I'll figure this out. My business is never going to reopen. But it's like, do you remember on the Office where there was that clip? Michael gets a vasectomy, and then he doesn't get a vasectomy, and he undoes it, and he gets it again, and he gets it again because Jan can't make up her mind if she wants to have kids.
Please, I scare easy.
That's the experience for business owners in Alberta. That's the experience for everyday people in Alberta, where it's like, okay, we're free. Oh, but we're not. We're mask free. Yeah. Oh, but we're not. And it's like this all the time. At least if it's like that, you can plan. But what the heck is happening in Alberta?
No, you're so right about Ford. And Sheila, I remember doing a video in 2018. It was after the first 90 days, and it was applauding Ford. He was hitting it out of the ballpark. First and foremost, he had the legislature sit during the summer. I can't remember when that ever happened. Everybody had to give up their summer vacation days to get policy done. And then when the pandemic hit, you're right. He's now known as Flip-Flop Ford. He demonizes his own base, calling them a bunch of yahoos. It was his Hillary Clinton bunch of deplorables moment. But of course, Hillary was attacking the enemy, the Trump supporters. Ford is attacking his own supporters, which makes no sense. My big question with Ford is who or what got to him? And also, in light of what's happening in Alberta, I think this is going to embolden Ford in case, once flu season hits and we start getting, people with sniffles and coughs, to also do a further lockdown. And he's going to say, well, look, they're even doing it in Alberta. We can't ignore that. So very depressing. Why don't we run that clip again and just show this comedy of errors?
This is a happy day for Alberta. I am very happy to be here with Health Minister Tyler Shandro for some fantastic news for all Albertans.
To adopt the Restriction Exemption Program, a proof of vaccination program for participation in certain discretionary activities that have a higher risk of viral transmission.
Sorry.
But I just want to ask you if, because this message that we have right now is open for some, so I'm worried.
It's open for good. Open for good.
Are you sure that?
Open for good.
I don't want to go back to this.
I swear to God.
What's your position on vaccine passports for those individuals unwilling to be vaccinated?
Opposed, and we've been very clear from the beginning that we will not facilitate or accept vaccine passports, and that in fact we regard, I believe that they would in principle contravene the Health Information Act.
We have no capacity I don't even know what a vaccine passport is. All I know is this, that it's illegal based on the Privacy Act to ask somebody whether they've received a certain medical procedure or not, including a vaccine. So the government of Alberta at least will not be participating in anything like that.
Sheila, well, we weren't
illegal. He used the word illegal. Yes, It's illegal. Yes.
Well, Sheila, maybe we were too preoccupied with the election. Did the Privacy Act get rewritten so this can be allowed? And when he says open for good, and I think he said it 3 times, how do you spin that message in terms of, well, open for good doesn't mean open forever? Because you know how politicians do work with the legalese, fine print, nitty gritty. But I can't think of a way to counterspin that phrase open for good into something that open until, the second week of September.
Yeah, open for good until things are bad. And then we're not open anymore. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And there's a reason why the federal Conservatives have kept Jason Kenney, who's normally one of the most popular Conservatives, or at least had been in the past. I mean, he would campaign all across the country during federal election campaigns, and they've just sort of, he went on holidays for 2 weeks. A couple of weeks ago during the election campaign. And I think it's because they just didn't want him out there because he's so wildly unpopular. And I think the unpopularity of Jason Kenney as a proxy for the federal Conservatives here in Alberta, I think you can see that manifesting itself in the 20+% that the PPC are polling here in Alberta. That's a protest vote. That is an anti-vaccine mandate vote. I won't say anti-vaccine because these people are largely, like a lot of them, I'm vaccinated. I just don't think it's the government should be making that decision for me. A lot of people are saying that. But I think that it's an anti-lockdown, anti-mandate, anti-passport vote that's manifesting itself in the rise of popularity in the PPC.
And you know what you just described, it triggers a memory of how the Ford government here in Ontario operated a few weeks ago when they went back to the legislature and said, guess what, folks, so sorry. There will be a vaccine passport. It kicks in on September 22nd. And now we're going to prorogue Parliament to let all you businesses figure out how many bouncers and security you have to hire. And feet, do your stuff. This is so shameful. There's such a lack of leadership. And Doug Ford's phrase, one of his phrases along with for the people, was Ontario open for business. And you drop that stink bomb into the laps of business people who are now going to be put into the role of bouncers, security guards, police officers. And my goodness, come September 22nd, that's next Wednesday, Sheila, I can just imagine some of the brouhahas that are going to occur at gyms at movie theaters, at indoor dining places, and it's the government's fault. I'm sorry. This was such an unrealistic timeline, and they haven't given these business people any direction whatsoever, as far as I can tell, in terms of tangible terms on how to enforce it. I see by the clock on the wall, and Efren barked in my ear, the show is over. You like
we
that?
have a couple we should read. Efron, do we have time to read a few Rumble rants, my dude?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can.
I'll breeze through them.
We can ask. We can indeed read those rants, Sheila, and let us not forget before we sign off to plug WeWon'tAsk.com. That is our latest campaign, folks.
Yes, if you are a business owner or if you're just a regular person and you're just like, I want my friends to come over and it's none of my business whether they've been stuck with a needle before they come in my door. We've got a campaign. It's WeWon'tAsk.com. If you're a business owner, there's little stickers there that says that you won't discriminate. You just want to serve your customer, and what they do with their medical status is none of your business. You can sign up there. Also, we'll tell your story. If you're a business and you're brave and you say, no, enough is enough. I've done everything you asked me to do, but this is a bridge too far. Submit your story there. We'll come on out and we'll deploy a journalist to let everybody know how brave and how much you care about civil liberties and human rights.
And Sheila, if I may, I'm going to do a report on this later. There is indeed strength in numbers. Don't doubt that.
There is.
And I say this because yesterday I was in touch with a Hamilton bus driver. And don't quote me on these numbers, but I think there's about 880 Hamilton Transit workers. And 2 days ago, that was the ultimatum. You got to get double vaxxed or else. And I think he said about 130 of the drivers got the double vax and the rest did not. It was a I am Spartacus moment, right? No, yeah. I'm Spartacus. The bottom line is the city doesn't know what to do. They can't fire some 700 transit workers. The transit system wouldn't work. So it's in a pause mode. No one's lost their job. No one's been suspended. No one's been docked an hour's worth of pay. And that's because there was a critical mass that said, we're not going to do this. And thankfully, the Hamilton Transit Union, unlike so many other unions that's simpatical with management saying, yeah, get jabbed, they've got their backs. So there's a success story, and I can hardly wait to get this guy on camera and bring you the full report.
Okay, let's get to some of these Rumble rants and chats because I got to run out the door. I got an interview with a Maverick Party candidate here in a little bit. We've got a Rumble rant from, it doesn't say, what is this? I think we missed who sent it. I think the PPC will get a bump in Alberta now that the China virus passports have come. Thanks, Kenny. Haha. Shout out to Justin and Sheila. I think it's shout out to Efron. Do you have the graphic, Efron?
No, Efron cares nothing about distraction, animation, emojis, unlike Justin.
Yes, he's a very serious individual, hardworking. We've got a chat from AMT60 for $1. 30 PPC candidates were taken out of the election because they were told they have to have a letter signed by a learned judge at the 11th hour and didn't have enough time. Do you know what? We will ask Maxime Bernier about that because some of the things we read are not entirely accurate, but we will ask Maxime Bernier directly about that and see what he has to say.
And Sheila, I did reach out to the PPC candidate in Brampton who is not on the ballot, Baljeet, and he told me the number is actually closer to 80. And in his own personal circumstance, the bureaucracy was playing games with him. They kept moving the goalposts. He was complying with every demand, and it ran out of time, and his name is not on the ballot. You've now got to write it in.
And who knows how to do that? You know, a lot of people don't even know how to do that.
And I'm uncertain about whether or not spelling counts. I'm getting conflicting messages about that. If you have one vowel out of place, it's a spoiled ballot.
So punishing ethnic candidates. Sounds great. That might be systemic racism also.
Oh, yeah, you think, right? So I'll be seeing Mr. Bernier later today, as a matter of fact, and we'll get the full meal deal on that.
You know, I have the most least ethnic name on the planet, right? But people still spell it wrong. They spell Sheila wrong because whatever, there's still a dozen different ways, even though I spell it the most old lady name possible, and they put the wrong Reid all the time, constantly. So, I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like for people with a name that is ethnic sounding, and now you're supposed to write them in and not spell it wrong. Sounds legit. And
by the way, Sheila, to a Liberal, you've got a very triggering surname, that Gunn thing. You know, I know it's two N's, but Guns. Gun's bad. Gun's bad.
Somebody told me I have the most Métis sounding name on the planet. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to leave that one out there floating around. So we've got another one from Mike G. 1012 gives us $10. Thank you very much. Do you think DeSantis might do the same as Kenny eventually? I do not believe so. He's actually changing laws to make sure that nobody ever even gets the idea that they might get away with enforcing vaccine passports on their customers or forcing masks on their children in schools. I mean, he's changing laws to make sure that this doesn't happen. Not so in Alberta.
Indeed, just a couple of weeks ago, we had a staffer move to Florida. That's how sure he is that
Yankee's a refugee down there.
Oh, he's living the dream, driving a Ram pickup truck and had sunny days every day and not masking up and none of these.
It's funny. It's funny because he would send me pictures of like pickup trucks with like conservative stickers in the back window, and I'm like, is that supposed to be abnormal to me, or is it just something that you've never seen before because you're from like the eastern part of the country, because that's life here?
Well, good for him.
I think we're all caught up.
Oh, okay then. So, well, Sheila, what is the deal with? We actually talked about that. We won't ask. And by the way,
one last thing. One last thing before we go. This shirt that I'm wearing, I don't know if you can see it. I'll maybe scooch over.
I love it.
It says, "I will not comply." It's a sun, a cheeky sort of smug sun, happy warrior shirt, right? Because you don't have to be confrontational. You don't have to be the angry Karen in the Walmart lecturing people because they're not covered in a piece of paper while you grab the macaroni off the shelf. It's just a happy warrior t-shirt, says, "I will not comply because I'm not gonna. Come and get me, government." And this shirt is available at rebelnewsstore.com. Yeah. Great. Good job.
You know what? I'm going to put in an order for one. It's a little girly in terms of the colors and the illustration.
Lighten up.
But I'll lighten up. I'll identify as female when I wear it. That's the way to go these days, isn't it, Sheila? Isn't that the approved way? What are you identifying as?
It's orange and yellow like McDonald's fries. It's not girly at all. Anyway.
Sheila, it looks great on you. It accentuates your eyes. Well, folks, that brings our show to an end. I know we really dwelled on what's happening in Alberta, but it was important because it's a terrible flip-flop, a terrible infringement of Albertans' rights, and it's probably going to come elsewhere across our great Dominion, and it's just so sad that it is Premier Kenney that is behind this, or whoever has gotten to Premier Kenney, much like whoever has gotten to Premier Ford. In any event, thank you so much for those who contributed in our chat section. Thank you to Efren, doing a brilliant job filling in for Justin.
Yep.
Thank you to the She-Devil, of course. And as for me, David Menzies, we'll be seeing you on election night on Monday. We'll have all hands on deck for coverage that you can trust, because you really don't want to tune into the CBC and Rosie Barton on that night, I should think. In the meantime, stay sane.
Warning.